Climate change, of course, is something that affects all of us. And as many of you will know, the legal anchor for the various climate change legislation that we're seeing implemented today is the COP21 agreement, or the Paris Agreement that came out of the COP21 conference. So I'm delighted today to be joined by Simon Drake of City Science to tell us a little bit about that agreement. Hello, Simon, and welcome.
Hi, great to be here. Yeah, as you say, the Paris Agreement was a real good turning point in the global recognition of climate change as an issue and something that needs to be addressed. And yeah, actually, City Science was founded in that same year, 2015, in recognition of the importance of this change. So our founders recognised that to achieve the global targets set by this agreement, every sector and organisation would need support in first quantifying their respective challenge, but then taking action to reduce their emissions. So since 2015, we've worked with a broad selection of clients from both the private and public sector and across a huge diverse amount of industries. Each of our clients is unique, and we work collaboratively with them to understand their specific challenges, then support them to accurately quantify and report their emissions, then develop effective decarbonisation strategies, and then ultimately assist them in delivering those strategies. From our extensive experience, we have a practical understanding of the challenges organisations face, and we're passionate about identifying opportunities that can deliver both decarbonisation but also operational and commercial benefits.
That's very interesting. Look, Simon, I guess I've been in telecoms now for 35 or so years. I've worked in many different parts of the industry and traveled around the world visiting various telcos and have helped them solve all sorts of problems that they have. But in all of that time, whether I've worked for a telco, whether I've worked for a vendor, I've never really seen a big black chimney, belching smoke. It doesn't strike me as an industry that's really a problem polluter. So does it really affect us?
That's a really interesting point. As you say, the ICT industry isn't sort of the first that comes to mind when you start thinking about the largest polluters, especially when the industry is seen as a sort of a significant enabler for decarbonisation. Giving an example, I'm sure we've all seen first-hand experience of how the ICT industry has enabled remote working, which in turn significantly reduced transport emissions. But what many may not realise is that behind this industry sits huge data centres which require huge amounts of energy to run. In fact, global emissions from cloud computing alone is estimated to contribute between sort of 2.5 to 3.7% of total global greenhouse emissions. That may not sound like a huge percentage, but it's actually a large contributor in both kind of commercial flights and shipping, two industries which are subject to significant public scrutiny. And another kind of a fact I like to use is that the carbon footprint of operating Bitcoin, which you'll know is a digital currency, is actually larger than many nations and comparable to nations such as New Zealand. So hopefully that gives a bit of perspective of the size and the impact the industry has.
That's a real eye opener. Thank you for that. Look, am I right in thinking as well that this problem's going to be passed on to other people that are effectively generating this emission? Am I right in understanding that effectively, if I'm running an application that's within a data center, all of a sudden I'm going to need to take some of that pollution and put it into my financial reports? Sort of how does that work? And am I right in thinking that? And who does it really affect?
Absolutely. So ultimately, it affects anybody in the kind of downward supply chain from those kind of data centers or ICT industry organizations. So yeah, kind of looking downstream through that supply chain, those organizations which are using this ICT, the kind of ICT products and services, they'll all be affected and they'll all be having to report their proportion of the total emissions. So these customers will be looking to their suppliers to reduce these emissions. And obviously ICT interacts with every other global sector, and the market pressure, will be increasing to deliver carbon reductions consistently over time.
That's very, very interesting. So look, to bring it back to me or someone like me, why should I do this course? Why is it relevant for me in my day-to-day job?
Yeah, great question. I think I would compare it to the way that every organization and every department of every organization needs to have an understanding of their kind of financial budget and the financial impact on the business. this is going to be a similar thing when we come to carbon. This isn't going to be something that's going to be locked away in some sort of compliance team in an organization. It's going to be something that has to permeate through the entire organization, and everybody's going to have to be what we term carbon literate in terms of talking about their impact on the carbon footprint of the organization, and working collaboratively to decarbonize for both the company and the wider community.
So what you're saying is it's going to be my problem.
Absolutely, it's going to be everybody's problem. It's a global issue which every person on the planet is going to contribute to, and as the kind of the awareness of the problem continues to grow, yeah, every person and every organisation is going to be a key part in delivering that solution.
And when you say every person in every organization, is that just in the UK or just in Europe? Everywhere?
It's global. It's a global impact. When we look at carbon emissions, it doesn't matter where an emission is created. An emission created in the UK or an emission created in Australia has the same overall impact on the planet. So it's a truly global issue that we're all having to face.
That's very interesting. And am I right in thinking that this is somehow connected with global accounting standards, the IFRS standards? Maybe you're able to tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the kind of the global greenhouse gas protocol standards, are the kind of the global standards which we follow. Those are now started to kind of filter through financial reporting standards. So things like the IFRS, the International Financial Reporting Standards, but also into kind of national, kind of UK generally accepted accounting practice and the equivalents for the US. So we're really starting to see that kind of globally accepted accounting practice is starting to filter through each nation's reporting at different speeds. But what is a really positive point about this is that nationally and internationally, everyone is aligned on the objectives and are putting together to provide consistency. And ultimately, all strive to achieve the same objective.
Very interesting. So, and I'm assuming, from my experience, most listed telcos for sure have moved towards reporting with IFRS, either IFRS or GAAP. And I'm assuming there's an equivalent for GAAP. And this is going to mean that this is really going to drive the impact into the telecom sector. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So yeah, the requirements for kind of listed companies have come, with many things. The reporting requirements for the larger listed companies has come before those of the smaller companies. So yeah, the large telco companies or ICT companies will be reporting on this already, and the amount of information they need to report in their financial statements will be continuing to increase over time. At the moment, we're seeing largely it's about kind of reporting where you are now and the activities you're doing rather than whether you are or aren't meeting certain targets. But there is a directional travel on this in that, reporting is going to increase and transparency is going to increase, especially because people like investors and shareholders, as well as, customers and employees are increasingly, this is an increasingly important factor to them. So having the available information out there for them to kind of assess how their organization or how organizations they're connected to are performing is crucially important to them.
Thank you for that, Simon. That's very enlightening. So, um, we've worked in partnership to produce a course that's running very shortly. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what the course covers.
Absolutely. So the course has been designed to take attendees on a journey. So firstly, we'll start with an overview of the science of climate change, global warming, and the impact of greenhouse gas emissions. If we're going to truly commit to decarbonisation, we should really understand why we are doing it. In this section, we'll also cover some of the key terminology so attendees feel they can talk about the topic with confidence. From here, we will explore some of the political and regulatory context, including latest developments, which will also impact the ICT industry, followed by an overview of the reporting requirements necessary to comply with these laws and regulations. We will then take a look at how ESG interacts with green finance, including how the ICT industry can take advantage of emerging financial solutions and opportunities. Building on this further, we will also look at how decarbonisation and net zero is likely to impact existing and future business models, including consumer trends, changes to product and service design approaches, and the types of products and services that may emerge. Finally, we will highlight some of the best practice already being undertaken by the industry, both in terms of their carbon reporting and reduction activities, but also in their response to market trends and taking advantage of valuable opportunities that the transition to a low carbon economy presents.
So, Simon, thank you for your time today. And I have to say a big thank you to you and your colleagues at City Science for all that you've taught me on this subject, because it's certainly a subject that's not going away. It's one that's very important to all of us. And I'm certainly looking forward to joining you on the 19th of July.